For 12 long years, Emily Rhodes had built her life around silence, the kind of silence that healed and haunted in equal measure. She woke every morning before sunrise, when the coastal fog still clung low over the marshes of Beaufort, South Carolina. Her small marine repair shop sat at the edge of the docks, smelling of salt, oil, and old wood. The first sound of the day was always the click of her coffee mug against the counter, followed by the hum of an outboard motor she was rebuilding for a fisherman who couldn't afford a new one. The townsfolk knew her as Miss Rhodes, the woman with grease under her nails, the one who didn't talk much but always got the job done. She was quiet but respected, maybe even a little feared. She could lift a boat propeller heavier than most men and had an uncanny way of fixing things others gave up on. No one ever asked too many questions about her past, because Emily didn't give them room to. At 38, she'd built a careful rhythm, days filled with engines, nights filled with books and the occasional walk by the docks when the moon shimmered over the water. To anyone else, it was a peaceful existence. But to her, it was penance. Because 12 years ago, she had been Lieutenant Emily Red Hawk Carter, the only woman in her Navy SEAL unit, a trailblazer, a ghost, a legend whispered about but rarely seen. Her unit, SEAL Team 12, had been deployed deep in enemy territory during a classified operation in North Africa. They had been ambushed, not by chance, by betrayal. She was the only one who made it out alive. The guilt never left her. Not after the medals, not after the investigations cleared her name, not even after she walked away from the Navy entirely. She buried Lieutenant Carter in the desert of her past and became Emily Rhodes, the marine mechanic who wanted nothing to do with war or death again. Still, some habits never died. Every window in her small apartment above the shop had a clear line of sight to the street. Her tools were arranged with military precision, every socket and wrench placed exactly where it belonged. Her morning run followed the same route, out to the lighthouse and back, because unpredictability made her skin crawl. The people in town thought she was shy. They didn't know she was watching, listening, always ready, but sometimes, when the wind carried the sound of the ocean too clearly, she'd find herself staring out at the waves, her heart pounding like it used to before a mission. The sea was both home and reminder, a mirror of what she'd lost. And then there was Jake Miller. He was the new sheriff, ex-Marine, kind eyes, easy smile. He came around sometimes under the excuse of getting his patrol boat serviced. Emily saw through it. He wasn't there for the motor, he was there for her. Still working late, he'd ask, leaning against the doorway, his badge catching the evening light. Still pretending you know anything about engines? She'd reply without looking up, tightening a bolt with steady hands. He'd laugh. You ever gonna tell me how you got so good at this? Practice, she'd say, eyes flicking up briefly, the kind of look that ended conversations before they started. Jake respected her walls. He didn't push. Maybe that's why she didn't mind his company. Some nights, he'd stay while she worked, talking about fishing tournaments or town gossip, and she'd half listen, half drift into thoughts of a time when her life had been louder, full of commands, gunfire, and camaraderie. But she never spoke about it. Not once. Then one rainy night, everything changed. She was closing the shop when she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It hadn't moved for hours. She thought at first it was some tourist lost in the fog. Until she saw the glint of a government plate. Her stomach tightened. She locked the shop door, pretending not to notice, but her instincts flared like a silent alarm. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, every sense sharpened. Years of pretending to be normal fell away as muscle memory kicked in. She turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from a single lamp, and watched through the blinds. Minutes passed. Then, two figures stepped out of the SUV. Dark suits, no umbrellas despite the rain. The kind of posture that screamed federal. Her hand brushed against the drawer beside her, the one that still held her old Navy-issue sidearm, wrapped in cloth. She hadn't touched it in years. But she knew this moment was inevitable. A knock echoed through the hallway. 3 sharp raps, the kind that weren't asking, but commanding. Emily stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. Her reflection in the rain-speckled window looked calm, but her heart thudded in her chest like a war drum. She opened it. The taller of the two men nodded. Ms. Rhodes, depends who's asking. He reached into his coat, slowly, and handed her a sealed envelope. It bore an emblem she hadn't seen in over a decade, the gold trident of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Ma'am, the man said, voice low. We're here on behalf of the Department of Defense. There's been a situation. You've been recalled to active duty. For a second, Emily forgot to breathe. The rain roared outside, the world tilting around her. You've got the wrong person, she said evenly. I haven't been in uniform for 12 years. The second agent, younger, colder, spoke. We know exactly who you are, Lieutenant Carter. Her old name hit like a bullet. The name she'd buried. She looked down at the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly before she caught herself. What kind of situation? The older man hesitated. One of your old team members, Chief Petty Officer Dean Riker, he's alive. And he's gone rogue. The words cut through the silence. Riker. He had been the one who saved her during the ambush. The one she thought had died covering her retreat. Alive, she whispered. The man nodded grimly. And he's carrying information classified above your clearance. We need someone who knows how he thinks. You're the only one left who does. For a long time, she said nothing. The storm outside deepened, lightning flashing over the harbor. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, the quiet woman gone, the soldier beneath beginning to wake. Redhawk, the younger agent said softly, almost with respect. Your country needs you back. She closed her eyes, taking one slow breath. 12 years of running, hiding, pretending. Gone in an instant. When she opened her eyes again, the look in them was different, sharp, focused, dangerous. Give me 12 hours, she said quietly. Then tell your CO that Lieutenant Carter is coming home. And as the agents left, the envelope still heavy in her hands, Emily turned toward the window, watching the rain blur the lights of the harbor. Her quiet life was over. The sea was calling again, and this time, it wouldn't let her go so easily. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, the unopened envelope lying on the table beside her, watching the rain smear across the glass like moving shadows. 12 years of silence, gone with a single knock. When dawn finally broke, she moved like she was back on deployment, efficient, precise, no wasted motion. She pulled out a duffel bag from the closet, one she swore she'd never open again. Inside were the remnants of another life. Her old fatigues, a worn combat knife, a faded photograph of SEAL Team 12, 7 faces frozen in a moment before everything went wrong. She traced her finger over one of them, Riker. He had been their point man, always grinning, the kind of soldier who made danger feel like a game. But he'd also been sharp, calculating, too smart for the world he fought in. If he had turned rogue, there had to be a reason. The Navy wanted to call him a threat, but Emily knew better. Nobody survived that ambush by accident. At 0700, she locked the shop, left the keys under the mat, and drove to Charleston Naval Base. Her old credentials, though outdated, still opened the gate after the agents logged her name. The base looked different, newer tech, new faces, but the air smelled the same, salt, jet fuel, and tension. Inside the operations center, Admiral Ross waited, a tall, broad man with graying hair and a stare that could cut through steel. He'd been her commanding officer once. Lieutenant Carter, he said, standing. Didn't think I'd ever see you in this room again. Neither did I, sir, Emily replied, her tone steady. He gestured toward a digital map projected on the wall. It showed a red blinking dot moving across the Middle East. Riker resurfaced 3 weeks ago in northern Yemen. He intercepted a black site transfer carrying advanced encryption tech. Since then, he's been ghosting us. But last night, he made contact. Emily's brows furrowed. With who? Ross hesitated, then said, you. He handed her a secure tablet. On the screen was a single message, time-stamped at 0200 hours. It read, if they find this, tell Redhawk she owes me a drink. We both know the truth. Meet me where it ended. Her heart tightened. Where it ended, that could only mean one place. The desert outpost in Algeria, where the ambush had torn their team apart. Ross folded his arms. We believe he's gone rogue. But if he's reaching out to you, we can use that. You'll lead a small recon unit, make contact, and bring him in. Alive, and if I think he's not the enemy, she asked quietly, then you better pray you're right. The words hung heavy in the air. Emily nodded once, eyes hardening. By the next morning, she was airborne again, Black Ops transport, unmarked tail number, 5-man team. The desert stretched below them like a living furnace. Her unit was young, sharp, and disciplined, but they didn't know her history. To them, she was just Lieutenant Carter, the legend they'd heard stories about. When they landed at a forward outpost, Emily led the briefing. We don't engage unless I say so. Our objective is contact and retrieval, not elimination. The men nodded, but she saw the doubt in their eyes. They didn't understand why they were chasing a ghost for someone who'd been out of the field for a decade. That night, as the stars burned cold above the dunes, Emily lay awake, the memories clawing back. The sound of gunfire, the screams, the dust in her mouth. The moment Riker pushed her behind cover and shouted, "You go." That's an order, and the explosion that swallowed him. She thought she'd buried that moment. But now it was alive again. At dawn, they moved. Silent, efficient, heat rising in shimmering waves. Hours later, they found what was left of the old outpost, rusted fences, bullet-pocked walls, and the ghosts of the past. And then she saw it. A single figure standing by the wreckage, hands raised, unarmed. Riker. He looked older, leaner, his beard streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same, sharp, alive, knowing. "Took you long enough," he said, a faint smile curling on his lips. The men aimed their rifles instantly. Emily raised a hand. "Stand down." She stepped forward slowly, the desert wind whipping around them. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah," he said, "so were you." They stood there in silence, 12 years of ghosts between them. Finally, she asked, "Why now, Riker? Why contact me?" He glanced at the men around her, then back to her. "Because I couldn't trust anyone else. Not after what they did." "What they did," she echoed. He nodded toward the horizon. "That ambush wasn't a setup by the enemy, Redhawk. It was our own. Command sold us out. Someone up top wanted us gone." Emily's chest tightened. "That's impossible." Riker stepped closer, eyes burning. "You ever wonder why they buried your file? Why they let you disappear instead of dragging you back? Because you're the last piece of evidence they couldn't erase." The words hit like shrapnel. "Why should I believe you?" she asked, voice low. He reached into his vest, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a data drive. "Because I have proof. Files. Communications. Orders signed by people still sitting in DC. I've been hunting them ever since. But someone found out. They sent a kill team last month. I took the tech to keep it out of their hands." Behind her, one of her men muttered into his comms. "Command, we've got the target." Awaiting. The transmission cut out. Static hissed through the air. Riker's expression darkened. "They're here." Before Emily could react, a missile struck the dune behind them, exploding in a wave of sand and fire. The blast threw her to the ground. She rolled, ears ringing, as gunfire erupted from the ridge. Unmarked helicopters, American. Her men returned fire, confused and shouting. Riker pulled her behind a wall, tossing her a rifle. "Still think I'm lying?" he yelled. She didn't answer. She just started firing. Minutes felt like hours. The sand turned to smoke and ash. By the time the shooting stopped, only Emily and Riker were still breathing. She looked around, her team gone, the sky choked with dust. "Who were they?" she demanded. "Private contractors," Riker said grimly. "Hired by someone who doesn't want this story getting out." He handed her the drive. "Take it, you're the only one they won't kill on sight." Emily stared at him. "Come with me, we can clear your name." He gave her that same crooked smile she remembered. "You still believe in the system, huh?" Before she could answer, another explosion hit nearby. Riker pushed her down, covering her with his body. The shockwave rolled through the ruins. When she looked up, he was gone, a trail of blood leading into the dunes. She called his name until her voice broke, but only the wind answered. 3 days later, she was back in the States, bruised, burned, and furious. The official report claimed her team was lost in enemy crossfire. No mention of Riker, no mention of the contractors. But the data drive was real. And what it contained, names, payments, orders, would blow the lid off everything. As she sat in a dim motel room, the glow of her laptop casting light across her face, Emily opened a secure connection. She uploaded the files, every single one, to the press, to Congress, to the world. When she was done, she stared at her reflection in the window, the desert dust still clinging to her hair. The world would soon know what the Navy had tried to bury. Emily, Redhawk, Carter was done hiding. The SEALs had called her back, but this time, she wasn't fighting for orders. She was fighting for truth.